everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. I'm Rachel Lapidus, Strategic Program Manager at the University of California, San Diego, and I will be your moderator for today's Process Palooza. This is the fourth session in our Process Palooza Tuesday series, and today we will be discussing the power of continuous improvement in healthcare. If you've ever thought that lean processes were lifesavers, today's session will show you how right you are. We'll hear about innovative approaches in cancer care focusing on the patient, lean approaches to organ donation that save lives, as well as our first set of competition presentations and winners. As always, please feel free to use the Q&A window to submit questions at any time for our panelists and presenters. This session will also be recorded and placed on the Process Palooza website at processpalooza.ucsd.edu. This webinar has closed captioning. You can click on the closed caption button at the bottom of the screen and select Show Subtitles. And instructions are also being posted in the chat. Let's jump right in. In just a few minutes, you will hear from Dr. Dr Esterman, a surgeon and oncologist, whose innovative approaches to battling breast cancer landed her among Time Magazine's 100 most influential people in 2016. In addition to her practice, Dr. Esterman is a professor of surgery and radiology at the University of California, San Francisco, and she directs the UCSF Carol Frank Buck Breast Care Center at the Mount Zion campus. Her work is devoted to developing new, more effective ways to care for and empower breast cancer patients during treatment. She tailors treatments for individual patients using biology, personal preference, and constant feedback regarding outcomes of care. In 2018, she was honored by OncLive as a giant of cancer care for cancer diagnostics and her less is more approach. In 2019, she was a speaker at the Time 100 Health Summit, along with several global leaders shaping the future of healthcare. We were unable to have Dr. Esterman join us live today as she devotes Tuesdays to patient care. So a few weeks ago, she graciously agreed to sit down for an interview with Ashley Gambier of UC San Diego Health. The video you are about to see highlights Dr. Esterman's drive to challenge the status quo, her philosophy on patient-centric care, and her dedication to creating a culture that embraces continuous improvement. Please know this is just a snippet of the impactful conversation, and we will share the full video on our Process Palooza website. And now here for you is Dr. Esterman.
It's important to think about who you want to be and why you're here. For me, I've chosen to go into medicine to care for patients. And really, when you make patients the center of what you do, and something is not right, and they are harmed by something that may not be working, then it's very clear what your motivation is. It's not about you and your career and getting to be first author or whatever it is you're going forward. You have to really think about, why are you here? Where does that motivation come from? And if what you're talking about is something that's not about your own personal gain, it's about the importance of other people, how can you not stand up? How can you not say something? It's about when you see injustice for other people and you're in a system and it's not right, who will speak if not you? And if it was you on the other end, you would want someone to advocate for you. So I think the most important thing people can do is think of themselves as an advocate. Medicine is about art and science and data, right? Trying to do the best you can. But the art is finding that connection and trying to help people through a very difficult time. That's the greatest gift, not just to the patient, but to you, I think. And, what I found is that, going into the operating room is a very scary time for people. And they And if you've ever been a patient yourself, it feels very cold and scary to be, even when even when it's your environment and you come into a room, and especially if you're looking at the ceiling, go in an operating room sometime and look at the ceiling. It's pretty terrible. Look at the room. It's not like some beautiful, lovely, comfy living room. It's, scary and cold, and especially if you don't think about it. And you think about when you come into the operating room, that's your environment. People are chatting, whatever. And here's this person scared to death, thinking about their cancer. And, people aren't paying attention. So part of it is to be there, to be with someone, to distract them. As I always tell people, think about some song that's meaningful to you, something that you love, and I'll sing it for you. And I hold their hand, and I'm there. And it also quiets everybody else down so that people aren't chit-chatting. And they don't mean not to pay attention, but it's, everything is focused on them. They're not looking at the ceiling. The patient's looking at you, and they're hearing something that is emotionally meaningful to them. And I think it is probably one of the most important things I do. Tuesday and Monday night before surgery day is Tuesday. I'm like, okay, what's the playlist? Looking up the songs, trying to remember what they are and learn them so that I can sing them. And it is, say, gosh, why take the time to do it? Because consistently people tell me, oh, that just made me feel so safe. And really, when you're taking care of someone, you're just wanting to make sure that they know that you care and that you have their best interest at heart. And it's really a privilege to be able to take care of someone, and honoring it helps you just as much as it helps the person you're caring for. I think there's a great quote from Elias Zerhouni, who was a radiologist and the NIH director. And there's this great quote from him. And he said, the greatest risk in science is to stop taking risks. For medical discovery and innovation to thrive in the future, we need to foster a culture that prizes habits of thinking outside the box, posing novel questions, and taking risks. Caution and safety are important, but so too are courage and imagination. If our understanding is ever to reach a higher level, we must be willing to let go of the rung to which we are clinging. And I think that is so important. It's interesting how threatened people are for trying to make change and to make things better. And you have to stop and say, our goal is to test new approaches for women that reflect the advances in risk assessment and treatment for breast cancer. If it's, and we've been reviewed by many. We're not just going out there and saying we know what's best and we're testing it. We're willing to put it to the test. If you think something is better, we could have just adopted it. But that's often what we do. And sometimes that's appropriate. You're doing a quality improvement measure for someone who has chronic pain. And something that's so big, where people feel so religious about, where people, it's more about belief than it is about science. But we have to be able to say, wow, if we've been doing something the same for 40 years, that same approach, it's not wrong to try a new approach. Let's get the information. And the more we embrace it, the faster we'll get the data. And if the data show that it's not better, then move on. But to get in the way and say we can't test it, that helps nobody. Be thoughtful, have perseverance, stick to the principles that really matter. I remember when I was in business school, Ellen and Tevin had sent us out to do these quality improvement projects. And I came back and I said, there will be no quality improvement until there are systems that allow us to track what we do and, is a byproduct of care. And I've had that notion for over 25 years. And I'm only just really getting to making those kind of big changes today. So good ideas are worth hanging on to. And, and you have to say, if you're trying one way and it's not working, take a step back, gather information, and try it another way. But don't give up. And real change takes perseverance and hard work. And, and surround yourself with people who share your vision and, have the capacity to help you create the team that can affect change. It's the Margaret Mead principle. Never doubt that a small group of people can change the world, because in fact, it's the only thing that ever has, or something close to that.
Wow, it is so inspiring to hear about the centering of patient care, even how meaningful singing a patient's favorite song can be. We forge connection through music, and what a natural and nurturing way to personalize care and create comfort. And now I'd like to introduce you to Ashley Gambier, who will share other insights from their impactful discussion. Ashley is the Senior Director of Transformational Healthcare and Ambulatory Innovation at UC San Diego Health. Here to speak with Ashley is Master Black Belt Tracy O'Rourke, who is collaborating with Ashley and UCSD's Transformational Health team. Tracy is a key partner in tandem with UC San Diego Extension to help build 10,000 problem solvers at UCSD Health. Welcome, Tracy and Ashley.
Thank you so much, Rachel. And hello, Ashley. How are you today?
I'm good, Tracy. And hi, everybody here with Process Palooza. Nice to be here with you today.
I'm so glad you can join us. And what an honor it must have been to personally interview Dr. Esterman. That must have been very exciting.
She's so remarkable. Everything she said, I was just hanging on every single word. You know, she's definitely perhaps doesn't have formal lean training, but the way she approaches her work was just, I mean, she's just phenomenal. Such an honor to be able to listen to how she's navigated change and approached the breakthroughs that she's had in cancer care.
Absolutely. I think what resonated for me is she's been in healthcare for so long. And sometimes you talk to people in healthcare and you don't even know what they're saying sometimes because there's so many acronyms, and she's so patient focused, and it's all about the connection, the human connection. And that really struck me. What resonated for you, Ashley?
I think the very first thing she said, you know, you need to know why you are here. I think having kind of that really clear intention and, you know, a goal statement, right? This is what I'm here to do. It's very strong purpose and understanding that that's what matters. And then aligning everything around achieving that goal instead of, you know, she talked a lot about the need to be humble, you know, instead of saying, oh, this is what I did and hanging on to that, to continuously pursue the goal and to challenge yourself not to get stuck with the achievement that you've made to this point, but to really think about how do we continually improve? How do we keep reaching towards that goal? And doing that with a really patient-centered, you know, understanding, you know, who's being served and your role in delivering that. I think that definitely stood out to me.
Yes. I also sense working in healthcare, caution and safety is so important, but I really like what she said about caution and safety is important, but so is courage and imagination. And how do we make that flourish at the same time? It doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be both, and it should be both. And how do we get comfortable with experiments and trying things? And I think that is so important because I think there is fear in terms of trying experiments.
Yeah. Well, and that's something that I think she also gave us the answer. She mentioned a number of times, you know, test your new idea, measure it, and reflect. You know, did it go the way that you thought it would go? And you don't just revert. If it doesn't go the way you expect, you find a different angle and you test that. And I think that's how she's been able to move through that fear of failure towards, hey, here's our goal and here's some ideas that we have, and this, we're going to measure this and see if it makes a difference or not.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I think, what did you think about what she said about treating the whole patient? Like, I think it's so heartfelt to really think that she would sing. She'd say, what's your favorite song? I'll sing it to you, because that is something that we wouldn't necessarily think about in the process of an operation, if you will, right? It's something she knows makes people feel comfortable, and she knows that that's her goal, is to care for them and make them feel comfortable in a very scary time. And I absolutely love that. Although I would be a horrible singer. Nobody should ever ask me to sing.
Me either. I, you know, but she does have a nice voice. And so to offer that to her patients, I think you talk about healthcare, and sometimes we forget that it's care in health. And when you think about, designing our processes for an effective surgery, or, anything that we're doing in service delivery for humans, you have to think about their experience at the same time, right? It's not just a widget going down a manufacturing line. That doesn't matter if it gets stored in a cold, dark closet. This is a person, and they have emotions, they have an experience, they have their own set of needs. No two people are alike. And so I think, when we right size the level of care to match their level of need, instead of having this like one size fits all, and we really acknowledge how they may be feeling as a human, as a person, into our design. She said she looks at her playlist for the week. She actually has a routine to make sure, she's got her standard work for preparing, so she knows the song, she knows what to do. She's actually designed this into how she does her surgeries. And I think that's so, so important.
Yes, absolutely. It's definitely, she's professing thinking outside the box, experimenting, but she's also keenly aware of the connection, and how do we make that connection, and how do we not treat humans as inanimate objects? How do we design the processes for humanness? And that is it. That would be an amazing experience for everyone if that was what healthcare did in all their processes.
Yeah, absolutely. Think about even what she's done to challenge, mass screenings. This is what she's been recognized internationally for, is kind of thinking about with breast cancer and the shift towards mass screenings. The intention there was tremendous. Let's catch things as early as possible. But looking at the data, she saw that it wasn't actually reducing the number of more severe breast cancer. So we're doing all this screening, which causes, a lot of anxiety for patients, a lot of early biopsies and different things that cause a lot of emotional trauma for patients, right? Fear, a lot of care that maybe they didn't need, and it's not actually impacting the number of more severe cancers. And so for her to kind of look at that data, reflect on the impact that that's having on individuals as humans, and think about, is there a different way, and kind of leveraging the precision medicine and understanding the individual biologics of each person, and what their needs might be, what their risks might be, and using that to integrate into the approach. I think it's another example where I think humanness in her design is so how she approaches care.
Absolutely. Even the vaccination process, it seems like a very simple process to get a vaccine, but there's lots of needs that are coming into play. People have preferences for comfort. And I work with people in healthcare, but I'm not in there every day. And when I have to go in for a surgery, I know exactly what she's talking about in terms of fear. And I've had good experiences, and I've had not so great, such great experiences. And those experiences where I didn't feel good, it didn't feel connected. I was scared. So this connection piece, I think, is so key. And what are some of the other pieces that she mentions? I mean, you got to talk to her for about an hour. And what are some of those other pieces that she talked about in terms of thinking outside the box and experiments for human connection?
Well, I think one of the things that stood out to me most was when she was talking about creating this culture of innovation where it's safe to fail and experiment. And, the visual from that quote from Eliza Hooney that she shared, we must be willing to let go of the rung to which we are clinging, right? This sense of security and comfort in the status quo. And I think, she talked a lot about the role of a leader in allowing for innovation, surrounding yourself with people that are going to share the same goal as you, and then you're open to how we achieve that goal. And you allow for that experimentation, as long as it's done with that measurement and that kind of transparency, so that you can reflect and think, okay, is this having the expected outcome or not, And so I think that's something, just being open-minded and taking risks and doing it from a place of being humble. I just felt like that resonated through her entire interview and stood out so much. And just the importance of allowing for innovation.
Yes. And I know that that's something you're doing at UCSD Health as well, allowing for innovation. How do we embrace it? And what do you think is working for you, Ashley, in terms of allowing innovation?
Well, I think that some of the biggest thing is really focusing on, we have a daily management system that we've rolled out. We actually call it the daily engagement system, because what we're trying to do there is actually empower people that deliver the care, those that are closest to our patients, to innovate, escalate, remove barriers, talk about the rocks in their shoes that get in the way of being able to do things smoothly, shake those out. And instead of necessarily just raising things up the flagpole and hoping they get addressed, to actually kind of shift more towards empowerment of what can we do differently and what are best practices that we can share. And so we've really been trying to design into our management systems, how do we do this differently so that everyone can be a problem solver and everyone can be part of making things better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I've witnessed that as well. I mean, you're doing a wonderful job trying to build 10,000 problem solvers and really allowing them to apply these tools, but also promoting this connection, this human connection, and finding that. So that is an absolute wonderful thing. Do you have any other final thoughts, Ashley, on the interview with Dr. Laura Esterman?
I think that the other key message that was throughout the whole talk was this notion of perseverance. She even shared an idea that she has carried with her for 25 years, and now the technology is finally there to allow it to happen. And so she's ready to go. And I think it's that sort of thing of, being able to have that laser focus on what's your purpose? What's your mission? What's your goal? And not giving up. And I think that message of not giving up is the biggest thing I take away from Dr. Esterman. She's a prime example of resilience and perseverance, humanness, and just clarity of purpose.
Oh, thank you for sharing, Ashley. I absolutely agree. Having that clarity of purpose can be a North Star for providing value to patients. So thank you so much, Ashley, for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you also for Dr. Laura Esterman as well. All right, well, guess what? We get to continue our journey to explore the power of continuous improvement in healthcare. Next, we'd like to introduce you to the team at Life Sharing. So Life Sharing is one of the 58 regional nonprofits dedicated to the life-saving and life-enhancing benefits of organ and tissue donation. Life Sharing provides organ recovery, donor family support, and educational services for the diverse population of approximately 3 million people in San Diego and Imperial counties. And today we have the pleasure of welcoming Lisa Stocks, the Executive Director at Life Sharing, and also Daryl Nethercott, who is one of Life Sharing's organ procurement coordinators. How are you guys doing today, Lisa and Daryl?
Great. Doing very well, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. I've gotten to hear a little bit about the amazing work that you guys are doing at Life Sharing. But before we get into that, is there anything you'd like to share, Lisa, that I didn't share about Life Sharing?
Sure, thank you very much. And so Life Sharing is a department of UC San Diego Health, just kind of like radiology, except we're tasked by the federal government to go into all of the hospitals in San Diego County and Imperial County, talk to families about donation, support them through organ donation. Our nurses then manage that potential organ donor, find recipients, and then we have technicians and nurses who go to the operating room with the transplant surgeons to help recover the organs. Organ donation is a lot more complicated than what you see on TV of, oh, we found a heart for you. No, there's a lot of other things that go into it, and we have this great team that makes it look easy.
Absolutely. And I'm sure it's a very delicate process. So I absolutely agree with you. Moving organs and pulling them out and giving them to people. I mean, those are very delicate processes. And so I understand that you guys are doing continuous improvement. And I'd love to hear a little bit about your story. So what was the reason that you started on this journey?
So we started on this journey about 10 years ago. And it really came out of, we had an annual retreat for our staff, and we had an internal survey, satisfaction survey. And one of the things that we seem to be missing the mark on is empowering our staff, our team members to make change. And instead of, having our team members make the change, then management was making the change. And we heard that loud and clear. So we started this process of process improvement. And we started calling it the great ideas to begin with. And we did about 20 the first couple of years per year. And there were more things, not process improvement, but things that the team wanted to get done, recycling or different types of brochures, things like that. Then we changed it into something called PDSA, Plan, Do, Study, Act, which is a little more healthcare focused. And that's still, we weren't doing as many as we thought we should. And then we just called it performance improvement. And we said, any idea, any change, any process that needs to go through a change at Life Sharing will go through this PI process. And that's what we've been doing. And we do over 100 every year now.
100? Wow, that's amazing. So I have a question for you, because you had mentioned, well, our management team was making the changes, but people didn't really feel like they were empowered. And one question I have for you is, what did you find, like the root cause? Like what when you explored that idea more, that people didn't feel like they were able to make change, what did you find in terms of discoveries about the culture and how it was?
I think we found that there wasn't a process in place that empowered the staff to make these changes, and we weren't putting it on their lap. So someone would bring a problem to management, and management would work on changing it. Instead, we turned it around and said, well, now you're in charge of changing this. Find a team, make a plan, make some goals, and if it works, great. If it doesn't work, that's okay too, because we're never going to get change if we're successful every single time. That means we're not pushing the envelope. And so, we do that with organ donation. As we push to get every single organ every time, we do that the same with just even simple internal process changes at Life Sharing. A team focuses on how to make it better.
Yes. And did you feel that, what are some of the things that a leader does differently now that they didn't do before to promote this process improvement? You said they sort of said, okay, you're in charge. How did that, is it something that they regularly check in with in terms of the people that are improving the processes?
Well, that was an important part of this, is we started having monthly meetings, monthly luncheons, back when we could have luncheons. Food brings people together. And so yeah, it was great. So we would have these monthly luncheons, and we would talk about those PIs that are open and where they stand and what they were doing, and the people who were in charge of them would talk about them. And then we would have open session where anyone could say, well, listen, I thought of this new PI that I'd like to do. And then other staff members would glom onto that and become part of the PI. And since in the last year, we have continued to be successful with it just by having a Zoom meeting at lunchtime to talk about all the PIs that we're doing. And the more the people do them, the more people come up with more ideas.
Yeah. So that's wonderful.
Yeah, the whole point is management can't come up with everything, because we're not the people doing the work. The team is doing the work. And so they need to come up with those ideas, because I won't see them.
Yes. So how many employees do you have at Life Sharing?
We have about 90 employees. We have nurses, technicians, we have a whole quality department. We have, admin staff. We have family services consultants. These are people who talk to the families of the organ donors along with our of the organ donor families along with our nurses.
And so you had 100 projects that were done, or improvements. And so that's pretty much everybody. That is more than everybody has contributed. So what are some of the things that you're doing to keep that going?
That's a great question, because we always, we don't want to stall, right? And we keep it going by making a higher bar every year. There's a goal where we have to have a certain number for the whole organization, but then every employee has to participate in at least a certain number. So usually it's 5. Next year, it's going to be 7. Each employee, to be part of this process, and part of their performance review, is that they're involved in 7 process improvements. And it's easy to be involved because not a single person is doing all the work. The team does the work, and there's goals to be met. And so, and no one wants to sit in the PI meeting and not have an idea. And so that's kind of, it's self-perpetuating. We divide them up into different kinds of things: customer service, internal process flow, external customer service, donor families. Everything is put into a little category, and we're able to measure the outcome.
Oh, that's wonderful. I would love to hear, we're going to hear from Daryl in just a moment about some of the actual projects that you guys have completed. But before we do that, what are some of the challenges that you felt that you faced related to healthcare specifically to get this ball rolling? And how did you handle some of those challenges?
So, the thing is, everybody wants to make sure the patient is better. At Life Sharing, our patients are the donor families. Our patients are also the hospital personnel. And because they don't deal with organ donation very often. And so as part of healthcare, we had to define our patients a little differently than in other healthcare situations where the patient's being brought in and they're alive and they need to have surgery. And so, one of the wonderful things that we were able to do for process improvement was really focusing on the family and the donor. Even though the donor is deceased, the family can write a little paragraph about their loved one right before the organ recovery takes place, and it's read in the operating room. And so that becomes our patient-centered focus. Is we're focusing on the operating room staff, talking about the patient that we're taking organs from to give to another person, and including the family in that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And are you finding that there was a little bit of fear with talking about organ donation because it's such a difficult time in people's lives? Are people open to organ donation, or are you finding that there was a fear of bringing it up at that point?
So many of the hospital personnel feel like we're, asking too much of a family to talk about donation. And so that's a constant education piece. That's some of the things that Daryl does when he goes out. We have other people who do education in the hospital. Once we approach a family, if you can imagine, this family hasn't been able to make any decisions at all. They didn't decide about the accident that caused the death. They can't even decide when they can visit or not in the hospital. So now we're empowering this family to make the decision that will help other people. And in the end, it really helps them. And they're able to see their loved one live on in somebody else. So no, we're not afraid to talk to families because we know we're helping them.
Yes, that is wonderful. And I can imagine how hard that is when you're dealing with all this. You're like, wait, am I going to make another decision right now? So having it work very well is very important. So I want to maybe spend some time talking with Daryl now. So Daryl, you've been able to, obviously there's lots of projects that have been completed at Life Sharing, and I'd love to hear about a few of them, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So thank you, by the way. So one of them that I will talk about here was actually from a Greenbelt project and was titled The F Word in Organ Donation.
F word.
And when I'm talking about that, of course, I'm talking about Faxing. So
Faxing.
Yes, there we go. So we have 28 hospitals within our service area. All of them have different fax machines, different fax numbers. It ends up being a pain in the butt trying to share the documents and trying to figure out faxing. So we did a gap analysis, and really it highlighted that faxing was a major time detriment to the organ procurement nurses. And when we looked at it, we were actually spending 40 to 45 minutes per case just trying to fax and just trying to figure out fax machines.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. So we looked at how different departments, both in UCSD and other organ procurement organizations, were sharing their documents and how they selected their digital equipment. So we had to look what was going to suit us. So it needed to be portable for when we're going out to the hospitals. It needed to be light, fast, such like that. So we actually created a process to replace faxing with these portable scanners. And just through that simple process change, we reduced our document sharing time from 40 to 45 minutes to 3 minutes.
Oh my gosh. Woohoo.
Yeah. So 92% improvement. So obviously we had big, there's that time saving, the man hours and such, as the financial impact with it. But the big thing is it also gave us more time, the nurses, to focus on the patient and focus on optimizing the organs so that we can transplant more organs and save more lives. So
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with you, Daryl. I mean, so, reducing documents transfer and handling documents, you're absolutely right. We would consider that potentially non-value add, not necessarily adding value to the patient. And now if you have less of that and people are to spend less time on that, that means they get to spend more time doing more important things like patient care or finding organs or placing organs. And so that's where I get really excited. You can tell I'm already excited. So that must have been wonderful. I'm hoping that you've eliminated the F word for lots of different places, because I mean, faxing, I can't believe it still happens, right?
I know, right? And actually, just like focusing on the continuous improvement side of it, our last step has been getting the San Diego medical examiner on board and getting away from faxing to them. So we've been working with setting up a secure email thing that we scan in and send the forms directly to them as well. So it's continued on with that improvement and using it. So that has been great, and a lot of staff satisfaction with that as well, getting away from faxing.
Wonderful. Can you share another project with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the other big things is the donor honor walks within the hospitals. So you may have seen some of this on social media. So historically, police officers, firefighters, the armed forces have had various ceremonies and honor guards in order to give honor to and respect those that have served, that have passed. So across the US, organ donor honor walks were organically generated as hospital staff, family, colleagues began lining the halls of the hospitals to honor a patient on their way to their operating room. And an honor walk itself, it's very powerful when you're involved in it. It's a quiet yet profound way to give a loved one a hero's goodbye, and to give thanks for the gift that they will give that's going to save and enhance the lives of many. So we've been involved in working with our hospitals in setting that up. And like I said, each hospital is very different in the way that it works, and each needed a different process, if you like. So we've come in with our experiences, and then also the experiences of other organ procurement organizations. And we've worked with the different departments within the hospitals. So whether it's ICUs, the ORs, the emergency rooms, legal as well. We've had to help direct and educate them on the best practice and process improvements there. So some of the things that we need to take into consideration with it is, are we going to do this for all organ donors? Is it going to be just for brain dead, or is it going to be a donation after cardiac death donors as well? And how are we going to protect HIPAA of the donor families and the donors? In some of our hospitals as well, we have the additional concern that maybe there's a transplant recipient on the same floor that's waiting, and now we're doing an honor walk going through that same ICU, and they're kind of looking outside thinking, hey, am I going to benefit from this? So there's a lot of things there. And then, of course, obviously, we've got the social media side of things, the photos and the videos and things like that. So risk management, obviously involved in that. And do they need media release forms?
Well, I think what is resonating for me, Daryl, is Dr. Laura Esterman said, caution and safety are very important, but so is courage and imagination. And it sounds like just listening to you talk, you've incorporated all of those things in trying to bring the honor walk process here to San Diego. How many have you done? How many honor walks have occurred?
I don't know exactly off the top of my head. I would say we're between 50 and 100, I would say, kind of since it's been taken off. But yeah, like I said, and the majority of hospitals now have them up and running. Obviously, when COVID hit, it took a little bit of a back step because they couldn't be lining in the hallways and less people were there and such. So we had to adapt a little bit. But yeah, it's huge. And like I said, very powerful with it.
Yeah, and it sounds to me like there was a lot to think through. As honorable as it is, it's it's scary to think, have we considered everything we need to consider? Like you just mentioned, the HIPAA requirements, patient care, how are the families feeling? And so how long did it take to develop this process?
With each one, I would say kind of when we're meeting with each hospital, it's probably a time span of maybe a month, various meetings and such, going backwards and forwards and getting the documentation correct with each side. But when you talk about it, we still have the improvements going on now. One of the latest things that we're coming up with, that actually one of the other nurses brought up, is when people are lining the hallways all the way up to the operating door, when families get to say goodbye to their loved one at the operating door, it's a very intimate, personal moment. But what we were finding was, if we lined the halls all the way up to the door, when the family is trying to have that final moment, they're surrounded by staff members and such around. So we actually now stop lining the halls about 10 feet from the operating door, so that the families can still have that intimate moment and personal moment alone with them.
Yes. Oh, that must be such a wonderful thing for the families, and such a good positive experience, which I think is, in this kind of process, that's what we really want them to focus on. The family should focus on the love, the care, the last final moments with their loved ones, as opposed to a broken process, right?
Exactly.
Like, I mean, we've had that situation, right, in the past, where things don't, I'm sure people have had that experience. Things don't go as well as you would have liked, and then they start focusing on other things. But to have it so streamlined and still working on it must be such a wonderful thing for the families.
Yeah, and it's making sure it is patient-centered, and as Lisa alluded to, our patient is the donor family, if you like, and making sure they have that moment and we're not taken away from.
And I'm sure that you've also implemented process improvement to other aspects of that. So there's obviously finding out if the donor wants to donate, right? Someone that is eligible, doing that whole screening of, okay, are they actually qualified? Then deciding, okay, they are qualified, and now let's find a match for these organs, right? So what is there any other process improvements that you've done that are related to some of those pieces?
Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff, and actually just one that probably went live the last month or so, and kind of got brought forward a lot faster because of COVID. One of the things that was happening was families were not allowed in the bedside as much, and we're not allowed to visit as much. So when we would go in, there'd be limited time. We didn't want to take away from the family being there with their loved one with us. Maybe they've only got an hour, and now we want to come in and talk about organ donation. So we created a brochure, if you like, with a lot of information and kind of going through different stories that people have, and then highlighting the process and things like that, to really help them. So when we can go in and talk to them, we can do it in a more time-conscious manner, so that we're not taken away from the families. And then we can also give them this literature at the end, which is really helped. And our donation rate and consent rate has been great, even through the pandemic. So.
Oh, that's wonderful. And do you guys have a lot of volunteers as well that come and volunteer at Life Sharing? Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? How do people get involved as a volunteer?
Sure. To get involved, you can reach out to Life Sharing and get involved at any time. We have but the majority of and Lisa can help answer some of this as well, the majority of our volunteers is a lot of families and such that have been there afterwards. They want to continue being involved, or maybe it's a recipient of a organ as well. They want to get involved, and they go out. One of the recipients I worked with recently, we were just talking to a high school and just kind of going through the importance of organ donation, and he came in and gave his spiel, and you know, he's a football coach at a local high school, and he's got kids and everything else. And without organ donation and such, he wouldn't be here today.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Lisa, what did you want to add? Is there anything you can add about the volunteers and what they do at Life Sharing?
You know, the power of their story is really the reason our volunteers are so wonderful and make such a difference. Like I mentioned before, you know, many physicians and nurses feel like we're, you know, harming the family or causing them more stress by talking about donation. But if we have a donor family come and talk to those same doctors and nurses and tell them the profound difference it made in their life to be able to donate, that changes the whole face of the process with the hospitals. And so that's really what our volunteers are. The most important part of what they do is share their story.
Mm-hmm. So almost all the volunteers have had the experience.
All of our volunteers have been either a donor family or a recipient.
Wow.
They're just absolutely passionate about either the gift that they received, and the transplant recipients celebrate their transplant as a new birthday every year, or the donor family who sometimes gets to meet those recipients, and they celebrate that the life of their loved one has lived on.
I love that so much. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to share about Life Sharing?
You know, if anyone wants to learn about Life Sharing, we have a website, lifesharing.org. We have a wonderful team, and they're the ones who make the difference and are able to help families through the process.
Mm-hmm. And so what's next for you on your continuous improvement journey? Tell us a little bit about that before we move on to introducing Monique.
So we have jumped on the bandwagon of lean training. And so we're encouraging every single person within Life Sharing to at least get to the yellow belt. We would like to have a huge group get to the green belt, and like Daryl, who already has his black belt, and I'm working on my black belt, we want to have those change makers within Life Sharing who can take our performance improvement to the next level, so we can have lots of measurable outcomes.
Well, I think what's exciting about what you said, Lisa, is you've already proven that the culture is ready for process improvement. You've seen people improve the process. Your leaders are doing the right things, and now you're training your people. Woohoo! Often people start with training and then they actually don't see any movement or progress because the culture isn't embracing it. So you've done it right.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl. Thank
you.
Okay, so now I would like to welcome Monique Pescucci. And Monique is definitely related to what we just talked about. Monique works for UC San Diego, and she is a former student of mine in the Lean Six Sigma Greenbelt program. How are you today, Monique?
Hi, Tracy. Thank you for having me. Hello, Process Palooza attendees.
So Monique has worked with Life Sharing during an emotional and intense time in her life when she lost her father about 2 years ago. And her father was an organ donor, and their family was the benefactor of the first honor walk ever conducted. Thank you so much for joining us today, Monique, and sharing your story. I can only imagine the strength it's taking to join us and speak about an important and difficult time in your life. And I really appreciate your willingness to share your story with me and with all of us. So thank you so much.
Oh, it's important to me. I think Lisa and Daryl talked about it, how, you know, the families, they get involved, and a lot of times we end up volunteering. I am a volunteer. And so I just look at this as one more way that I can give back and continue this process.
Oh, thank you so much. So I want you to share your story. I know that this is part of the healing for you, right? Like we've talked about this, and this is part of the healing, is sharing the story. And so this story is about your dad, Robin Cervantes. He was 54 years old, a father of 7. He had been a firefighter for over 30 years and lived a life of service. And I spoke to you and learned more about your dad, and he sounds like an amazing person. And thank you so much for your candor. And I mean, what was your dad like? Tell us a little bit about your dad.
Oh, he was life of the party. loved attention, very outgoing. He was definitely, to put it nicely, like a goofball, right? He just loved to make jokes, and he sort of, if he gave the ongoing thing we would say is like, oh, if you knew him and he gave you a nickname, then you were important to him, right? Because he had nicknames for everyone. So he was great. He was a great dad. He was very honest with me, I think, probably more so than I knew, growing up, those relationships. And so when it came to organ donation, when I turned 16, and I said, okay, I'm getting my driver's license. What's this organ donation thing? Because he was so involved in the fire department, and he was a paramedic, and he was on hazmat. So, he was all in, and he talked to me about it, and he was like, hey, I think it's a great thing, and here's why. And, after that conversation, I remember that conversation because I thought, oh, wow, like if I ever get in this situation, I want to be a donor. And he was like, great, I am too, and you sort of tuck that conversation away, not ever expecting for it to resurface. And then 20 years later, it was, one of those things where I thought, I'm so glad that we had that conversation. Because I think as a family, that might be some of the hesitation or the fear, is that you don't have these conversations, and then you have to make a decision, right? And so the timing is sort of off if you don't have these conversations. So I think I'm fortunate in that way that we already talked about it, and it just made the process easier for me to go through and be a part of.
Definitely. Yes. I mean, now that you say that, I'm a donor. I don't think my children know that I'm a donor, that I prefer to be a donor. So that is an action item for me. So let me start by relaying the origins of your experience for everyone. So your father, he went to Hawaii on a vacation. He hit his head, and less than a week later, he had a seizure and was in the hospital. And this was tragic and shocking event for you, for everyone. And once you realized and knew that he wasn't going to survive, you had to think about next steps. And you knew your dad was a registered donor. And so you inquired about the origin or the organ donor process. So tell us how that went.
Yeah, so while he was in the hospital and he was in the SICU at UCSD, and I sort of knew what the outcome was going to be before they officially, there was no brain function. He was not breathing on his own. The writing was on the wall, is how I like to say it, even though you're clinging on to any percent of hope, you're like, oh, medical miracles happen every day. Like maybe this is the one, even though, deep down inside. So I reach out to our nurse, one of our nurses. You really get to know the staff extremely well. And so when I hear, Dr. Esterman and Lisa and Ashley talk about patient care, like it really is the root of all these processes, in healthcare. And so I reached out to the nurse and I said, hey, I think my dad's an organ donor. I want to look into the process. Like, what do I do? Right? How does this happen? And she said to me, as a nurse, I'm not allowed to inquire or ask you about this, but since you brought it up to me, I can now look in. And before the end of that day, she had come back to me and said, he is registered. They have a way to look that up. And she said, so would you like to meet with life sharing team? And I said, absolutely. So they came out and were very, like Daryl said, just the education and informative. And even though I knew a little bit about it, I didn't know just how much goes into it, right? And so the process was so streamlined. I mean, they told me, like, if this outcome happens, this is the direction you're going in. And if outcome B happens, this is the direction you're going into. And if you want to start the process, it is completely up to you. If you want us to speak to other family members, we'll do it. Like they really went, what I felt was above and beyond. Like I felt like there's no way they give this care to everyone, right? Like they just make you feel so informed and so special. And patient care, I felt like was always at the center of their focus. So they did all of that. And then they came back and they said, okay, if you want to start, we'll start, which means they have to run tests, right? They have to, there's blood work and there's a test of, I'm sure, an array of things that I probably don't even know. And then they're checking the organs and they're running EKGs and there's a lot going on. And while that was happening, that's when we officially, found out that my dad was legally, they legally pronounce him. And so they say, okay, now we know which direction we're going in. And now we can look for a donor recipient. And so they try to find a match, and then they walk you through that process. So that was also, you know, like I said, there's so many processes within these processes, right? They're not just steps. It's a really big process, and everything else around me was so chaotic. You know, I have to tell you, I was meeting with surgeons and head neurologists and cardiologists and respiratory therapists. I mean, you're meeting with so many people. It's information overload. If you think about a spaghetti diagram, right? And I'm the item, I'm the activity. It was all over the place. But here comes live sharing, and it was so just different. I don't know, the way that they approached the entire process and how they walked us through, and we really felt comfortable with our decision. So we went through that process, and then they came back and they said, okay, we found a match, 4 of his organs. And it was almost like, would you still like to proceed, right? They don't say that, but they're always telling you the next step so that you can leave, or you can say no at any moment. Like, there's no pressure, there's no obligation. It's just information. Here's where we are in the process. So I really appreciated that about them. And then they approached me about the honor walk. So then that was a completely, you know, new and totally unexpected, and something I never knew what an honor walk was. I never heard of one until that moment.
Wow. And so when they approached you, because I'm guessing, I don't know if they told you it was going to be the first one ever, or if that wasn't something they shared, but what did they say? How did they introduce it to your family? Who was involved with that?
Yeah, so I was the primary medical decision maker, and my family was more than willing to have me be the person making all the decisions. But I was relaying information to them, and live sharing was, as you know, we had a conference room booked at the hospital, and so they would come in as well, so that everyone was on the same page, so that everyone could ask questions. You know, they might have questions that I didn't think of. So when they approached me about the honor walk, and they did tell me it would be the first one, and what they had said, because there's so much involved in it and the timing, that they had tried and it really hadn't worked out. And so they were hoping, you know, and again, it's like, hey, this might not work, but if you're interested, we can proceed. Here's the process. So again, they walked me through everything, and I thought, okay, let me just take this for a moment. And I went to my phone and I looked on YouTube, and I looked up honor walks, and I watched a video, and I just started crying, you know, immediately. And I was like, this is so beautiful. Like, I would love to honor my dad this way. I thought it was really fitting that he, you know, just one, he likes attention, but 2, I thought this is just a way for our family to know that, like, he's still living a life of service even after he's physically, you know, gone. So it all just made sense, you know, at that time. And I thought, yeah, let's, you know, I talked to the family, everyone was good with it. And so then we just got the next steps, you know, Daryl and the team and everyone just sort of walks you through, okay, here's what to expect. And everything moves so quickly. I mean, you're really on a timeline. Like Tuesday, it was Labor Day, September 2nd. So that's when they told us that our dad was passed, that he had passed. And then life sharing said, okay, now we're going to move to the donation process and the honor walk Wednesday. So, I mean, the turnaround time is really quick. You know, we had to be there at 5 o'clock in the morning, and just walking and showing up and seeing all his firefighter, you know, friends and family. And it was really beautiful. And I always tell people it was the beginning of my grieving process and my healing process. And if you're wondering, can those 2 things live simultaneously? They absolutely can. You know, grieving is not linear, and neither is healing. And so I look back, and talking even like today is still part of my healing process and grieving process, right? And so life sharing really gave that to me. I don't know where I would have been without going through this.
Oh.
So I'm forever grateful and appreciative.
Oh, that is so beautiful. I never thought of grieving as beautiful, but it is. You just portrayed that as a beautiful way to grieve. Wow. Well, I hope I don't cry. We have a video which highlights the first honor walk, the process conducted by life sharing, that highlights Monique, you, and the family, and to honor your father, Captain Robin Cervantes. So he lived an incredible life of service to the San Diego community. And in the end, as you say, he donated his organs to help save the lives of others. So are we ready to watch the video?
As part of our honor walks at UC San Diego Health, a white flag is raised in front of our hospital. It's a way to let our community know that an honor walk has taken place. Our hearts go out to Robin Cervantes' family. His selfless act has resulted in the donation of 4 of his organs, saving 4 lives. Honor walks like Robin's at UC San Diego Health are in collaboration with Life Sharing, a regional nonprofit group that coordinates organ donations in San Diego and Imperial counties. Many patients remain on the wait list. Please consider becoming an organ and tissue donor like Robin.
What a beautiful video, Monique. Oh, you have my heart. And I would love to know, tell me, what did this honor walk process mean to you and your family?
It meant, you know, that we could have a different perspective on death and what that really means and what your purpose is. You know, Dr. Esterman talked about that as well, like what your purpose is. And, you know, I looked at it as they're not taking something from my dad, right? Like they're giving something to these people that we don't know, but we're hoping they get some more time and that they get to be with their families. And so that really gave us the opportunity to hang on to that part of hope, right? Because we had already lost a loved one. And, you know, and prior to that, we actually lost my grandpa, my dad's dad. So we were really like, this was a very dark time for us. And, you know, I always think of it as like just sitting in a really dark room, no windows. And all of a sudden, you know, there's this little crack of in the door and you see this light shining through. And that's how that process was, like a little bit of light in this very, very dark time. And then of course that light got bigger. Like I let more and more in. I started working more with Life Sharing. And it's sort of become my personal mission, you know, to educate and to advocate for them. And really, I go back to the process, right? You always think about the process in a business, and you don't always think about the humanity and factor, right? How the humanness ties back, you know, to that. But it's the most important part of that process. And while I was in it, I didn't think about that. But here I am today, and I'm like, no, I wouldn't be here today if they didn't impact me, you know, in that way. So it's really meant a lot to our family, especially my grandma, who, you know, this, you know, Life Sharing gave her a blanket with the butterflies, which means so much to her. And so they did all these little things. You know, Lisa talked about the story that they read in the OR, you know, right before the process begins. And that meant a lot to us. I was able to write that out, and that, you know, helped me, as well as they ask you what song, you know, do you want to play? You don't hear it in the video, but in the honor walk process, they actually let you pick, you know, either your loved one's favorite song or a song that makes you think about them. And for us, it was Under the Bridge. You know, when my aunt had said it, kind of everyone in the family was like, yeah, that's his song, that's perfect. So all those little things really help, you know, with grieving, and it really helps you figure out what's important in life. And so this one little process impacted me and my family just in so many ways. And how do you measure that? I don't know. I think the best way is to say I'm here, right? And I'm talking about it, and that's a success, you know, factor. But I just have so much respect and admiration for the Life Sharing team. It's not a job that I think everyone could do, but it's just so needed. And, you know, organ donation is such a amazing medical, you know, I'm fascinated by the fact that we can do that. And it's just really given me so much. You know, I was able to hear from one of the donor recipients' family. They write letters. And so I got a letter from the donor recipient, his wife, his daughter, and his son. And that, you know, that just meant the world to me. I don't know how to describe, like, oh, okay, you did the right thing, even though I knew I was doing the right thing. It was just this sort of validation that I guess I needed, subconsciously. So I really appreciate this entire process. And I think, if it wasn't streamlined, if there was any misstep, it just wouldn't work, right?
Yes. Well, I'm so glad you appreciate it. And we so appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your story, Monique. I'm so sorry about your dad, and sharing your story is going to help others what that experience was like, and know that there's caring support out there during a very sad and difficult time, and hopefully provide that light that you had as well. So thank you so much, Monique.
Thank you.
Wow. That is the power of continuous improvement. It can help make very difficult times smoother. And during traumatic times, people don't have to focus on how the process is working. Instead, they can focus on the human aspects like loving and caring. So this discussion has really touched my heart and reinforces why I love continuous improvement and sharing stories. I'm going to turn it back to Rachel, our host for today, to give you an update on the Process Palooza competition. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Tracy. And I also want to acknowledge how powerful it's been for me. So far, I'm hearing this theme emerge about courage, compassion, and care, which also resonate with our Just Having Observed Memorial Day. And it's also touched my heart to see how process improvement can bring order and comfort, even in, I guess, especially under the most chaotic and emotionally arduous circumstances. So Monique, I just want to thank you again for sharing the story with us. Thank you. So just as process improvement can help even in these dark times, process improvement can also bring success and even joy day to day. So that leads us to appreciation in a new context. In terms of our process improvement competition, the Great LSS Race. The Great LSS Race takes real campus business processes and allows teams to flex their Lean Six Sigma muscles to analyze and recommend improvements right there on the spot. It has traditionally been a live, in-person, high-energy experience where the spirit of competition really shines through. This year, teams competed virtually using video conferencing and digital whiteboarding to come up with the best recommendations. We had 6 teams working on 2 separate campus processes. 3 of our 6 teams worked on a process from the Summer Graduate Teaching Scholars Program. This program provides an opportunity for advanced graduate students to obtain a faculty-mentored teaching experience. At the same time, it increases our summer session course offerings to undergraduate students. The Summer Graduate Teaching Scholars Program is a joint effort between undergraduate education, summer session, and the graduate division. The process is owned by Haley Caraballo, Lisa Bargabas, Courtney Aguila, and Casey Cashett, who all work to submit this process as a contender for the Great LSS Race. One of the primary benefits of the LSS Race is that a real campus process is being improved and that implemented recommendations provide a direct benefit to the process participants, including staff and students. So now I'll introduce the 3 teams who work to understand and improve this process. First, we have the Lean Green Process Machines, Katie Mankins, Rosa Ferranda, and Tyler Morrison. Next, the Blue Shift Explorers, Anuja Bajaj, Eris Mateo, Paul Yellen, and Sherry Hayes. And finally, Gold Standard Agents of Change, Shannon Capaldi, Brian Pinnock, Eric Winter Villaluz, and Melissa Brothers. During the first week of Process Palooza, the competitors worked to improve this process with the goal of increasing the number of applications to the Summer Graduate Teaching Scholars Program. Working virtually, the teams collaborated via Zoom and LucidSpark to identify and analyze the problem and recommend actionable improvements to our judges. Throughout the working session, the teams were able to ask questions of our team of Lean Six Sigma experts and our process owners. This support ensures that the teams have an accurate understanding of the process and of the DMAIC, define, measure, analyze, improve, and control tools that they are judged on. After their 5-hour working sessions, the teams presented their results to our panel of judges. Our judges scored each team on their use of Lean Six Sigma DMAIC tools, their actionable improvement recommendations, the anticipated impact and result of the implemented changes, their creativity, and their presentation and teamwork. This year, our panel of judges are made up of Lean Six Sigma experts from across campus and UCSD Health, as well as the process owners. Our 5 judges are Alora Pradenas, Managing Director from the Office of Operational Strategic Initiatives, Lily Angelosi, Transformational Healthcare Lead Coach, Carlos Rojas, Director of Clinical Research Strategic Initiatives, CRSI, Lisa Armstrong, Student Services Advisor from Global Education, and Haley Caraballo, Project Policy Analyst from the Office of Undergraduate Education. The teams are competing for a grand prize consisting of a virtual celebration with the Dean of the Graduate Division, James Anthony, Dean of Undergraduate Education, John Moore, and Associate Vice Chancellor for Educational Innovation, Carlos Jensen. A feature on UC San Diego's IT Services podcast, The Current, and a Yellow Belt Scholarship for 2 of the team's colleagues. But before we find out who the winning team is, let's take a look at some of the highlights from this year's presentations to the judges from our amazing teams.
So some of the things that we found as we looked into this process in more depth, and we will talk about the tools we use to do this examination, we found inconsistent messaging about the program and the requirements of the program across different departments and divisions. There were delays in confirming which courses were eligible to be included in the program and which students themselves were eligible. Too much of the process appears to be happening within a narrow window, and this affects the critical path overall for how long the process takes from start to finish. There's also rework caused by not having the information at the right time due to what activities are happening concurrently. There's lack of clarity around the criteria for reviewing and scoring applications, both within individual faculty members as well as the committee itself. And then we also discovered through talking to the process owner that there was a cap on the number of awarded applicants that was inherent in the program funding having a limit. And that wasn't apparent when we originally read through the process narrative, but it seemed to be a constraint in how the process functioned as we looked into the details of the process itself. So the improvements that we are recommending include expanding the functionality of the SGTS portal to include additional functionality about which students are eligible and which courses are potential options for the students teaching during summer session. We also would like to target the messaging and the marketing to eligible students within departments and divisions and increase the consistency of that messaging. But we feel that by targeting the messaging to the appropriate pool of students, we can give the students a better experience in how they experience the program and also increase their chances of success in their application for the program. We also think that we need to identify faculty members in advance of the announcement of the program so that students will not have to spend time wondering which faculty member they could work with or whether that faculty member is available for the summer session. We also thought that by providing the right information in this portal that matches the information needed both for the process review as well as the eventual setting up the positions within the IA system, that would have reduced the redundant information and also have all the information at hand when those appointments are later being set up. And we're projecting, based on our analysis, a potential save time, touch time of 66 hours overall, but we think it could be greater if we could fix the delays that were experienced in the email transmission and the wait time around email and how frequently students check it. So the projected savings could be larger if we can bring the email delays under control.
The Blue Shift Explorers, the students on UCSD campus are able to apply to teach classes during summer courses. I guess that would be the quick and dirty of it. This is our executive summary. We can go through this real quick. The process was pretty complicated, and so we decided to focus on the very first part of a multi-step process, which is when the student says, hey, I would like to apply to the summer graduate teaching scholarship. In order to apply, they need to work with their department to find a mentor, to find a course, to get some documents together, and then hit submit. So we focused on the step between, hey, I want to apply, and the faculty member hitting submit. So it's a collection of documents and conversations. For our discoveries, we walk through with the process owner the various steps. We process mapped the details of what a mentor and an applicant would have to do. And then we kind of got our head around things. We would like to discover more due to time and the limitations of this contest. So we were unable to actually Gemba walk through the submission form. We had the website of the submission of the process, but there was no form for us to go through. We had screenshots, which helped a lot, but we would like to dive into more detail about that. We would also like to work with the students and the faculty to see how their minds, how they interpret some of the instructions that they're given or the data that they're given in the application process. One of the recommended improvements that we think we might have is to better present the data to them. We think that there might be a disconnect between what the owners of the scholarship itself are asking and what the applicants need to collect. So in terms of improvement recommendations, we didn't finalize the improve and control steps for our process, but were we to continue down that path, we think some of these improvement recommendations would be on the form itself to data validate some information. So sometimes a faculty member might not know from which COA or fiscal project they need to get paid from. And so some way for them to get that information before they fill out the form would be great, or to make sure they're typing in the right one. Things like PIDs can be auto-filled from usernames, things like that. Likewise, sometimes if I'm a faculty member and I email if I submit my documents via the web, getting a confirmation email with added attachments that say like, this is the form that you filled out, these are the attachments that you had, might be useful for just record keeping on the faculty or the student side as well. And then likewise, going back to the website, seeing how data is presented. Are there any checklists that we can present? Is there the order of how data is presented? Could that be rearranged, something like that?
So to quickly start off with our executive summary, our problem statement that we came up with for the Summer Graduate Teaching Scholars Program was that the application process for the program is full of rework in a condensed timeline. And our discoveries included that certain defects in the process led to a tremendous amount of confusion experienced at the beginning of the process for the students. Students were unclear on what exactly was needed to complete the application packet, and there's an unclear timeline from the student's perspective. In addition, the clunky intake process of the completed applications does not support the student in completing the packet in a thorough and timely manner. The intake process also allows the required documentation to be submitted in multiple ways. So overall, our improvement recommendations came from 2 areas: the voice of the customer and the voice of the process and the voice of the department. What we heard from the customer, one of our recommendations is to include likely summer course offerings available for teaching in the application packet or in the call for applications. Another would be include a listing of approved and available faculty mentors in the call out and or on the website, creating a checklist for students, including tutorials on how to complete the application packet, and advertising directly to the students. Some examples would be through the Remind app, through their personal email, not necessarily their UCSD email, social media, and other channels like that. Other recommendations from the process and the departments that are involved in the process were to encourage academic department managers to discuss the program as an option with students even before the application call out goes out. Allowing students to upload all of their application materials digitally and directly through the summer graduate site to eliminate resubmissions due to formatting errors, and to standardize the process for all departments, including templates and how-tos.
Wow, I really appreciated the ideas in those videos. Great presentations, everyone. The full presentations will soon be available on the Process Palooza website. Until then, clearly, the judges had their work cut out for them. But after a tough deliberation, the judges finally came to a decision, which we are revealing for the first time today live. The winner of the Great LSS race for the Summer Graduate Teaching Scholars Program is Gold Standard Agents of Change. Congratulations to Gold Standard, you got the gold. But we aren't quite done with announcing competition winners. We also have the Best in Team Award voted upon by members of each team. The Best in Team Award winner from each team will win a seat at the WalkMe Builder Certification course valued at $499. WalkMe is a code-free digital adoption platform that helps users easily navigate business systems. The Best in Team Award winners from the Summer Graduate Teaching Scholars Program are Tyler Morrison from the Lean Green Process Machines, Paul Yellen from the Blue Shift Explorers, and Eric Winter Villaluz from Gold Standard Agents of Change. Well, congratulations to all 3 of you. And be sure, everyone, to tune in next week to see the presentation videos from the remaining 3 competition teams working to improve another real campus process and to hear the announcement for our final competition winners. But that's not all for winning. The winning keeps on coming. It's now time for one of you in our audience to win a raffle. We will have one lucky winner of a $500 voucher towards a project management or Lean Six Sigma professional development course, courtesy of UC San Diego Extension. Here are the instructions for the raffle. I will give you a question to answer. The chat function will open for answers to be typed in. You will have 1 minute to type your answer into the chat window. When time is up, the chat window will close again. A winner of the prize will be randomly chosen from all those who have correctly answered the question. I hope you're ready. Here comes the question. The question is, what did the radiologist and former NIH director, Dr. Elias A. Zerhouni, say was the greatest risk in science? Now it is your time to type the answer into the chat window. And while the winner is being determined, we would like to thank our sponsor, Koali Build, a no-code platform empowering UC San Diego to reduce process waste and free up staff time to concentrate on value-add activities. Put the power of process improvement in your hands with digital forms, approval routing, and customizable email notifications, all without writing a single line of code. You can learn more by visiting the link in the chat. And we also wanted to make sure to mention our bonus session this Friday, June 4th, titled Automate Your Business Processes the Easy Way. At this workshop, we'll team up with our sponsor, Koali Build, to walk through how to clearly and visually define a new campus process using process maps, then quickly produce a streamlined interactive workflow. And we hope to see you there. Okay, I think we're ready for the raffle winner. So first, the correct answer was that the greatest risk in science is to stop taking risks. And of all of those who input the correct answer, the winner is Wendy Nash. Congratulations, Wendy, and thank you for risking putting your answer in the chat. So we have learned a lot today. We have heard about how process improvement has contributed to patient care as well as saved lives through life sharing. And we have seen how the great LSS teams tackled a real campus process to expand teaching and learning opportunities to our students. Before we close today, we want to let you know about what is next. We encourage you to complete the post-event survey that you will be sent shortly to help us continue to improve our events. And I invite you to join us next Tuesday, June 8th, at our final session in the series, where we'll hear inspiring stories from nonprofits and community organizations that have embraced the continuous improvement mindset to make a difference in their community. We'll also close out our series with an interview with UC San Diego's Chief Information Officer, Vince Kellen, as he discusses the deeply human and definitely personal side of continuous improvement. Last but not least, we'll hear the results of our final competition in the Great LSS Race. Thank you again to our presenters and guests for sharing their time, knowledge, and experiences. And I want to thank all of you for spending time with us. Thank you, and we'll see you again next time.